everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fortitude. Well, this is what we promised. We got Randy Beausoleil and Lucky Riley with us today, talking about their new book, which is not, how long has this been out now?
Year.
Yeah, it's been about a year. Unwavered, where they co-authored. I've read it twice. It does not disappoint. And we're going to talk about this a little bit today. First of all, I don't think I'm even going to need that, but I'll have it down here just in case. How did you guys meet?
You want to take it?
Go.
We both met at Fallon when we were in Nevada. So both kind of at the end of our careers. Randy was already a civilian at that point, and I was on my last tour, and I got sent over to kind of be the flight suit in charge of the JCAS building, the Joint Close Air Support building, training JTACs for the Navy. And Randy was kind of the guy behind the scenes that really ran that show as a civilian. So they would rotate different flight suits through there every year and a half, 2 years to be the head of that school, but he was the constant there. So that's where we actually met up at that time. So we just started having different conversations about life and different things, and we saw the world the same way, we thought the same way, so we kind of clicked and hit it off and started talking about a lot of things that wound up coming in this book.
Well, plus we retired at about the same time, so I traveled around for about a year, and then we settled here and linked back up, and rest is history.
Yeah.
So as a disclaimer, if you haven't seen their individual podcasts, please back up and go take a look at those, because some of that we're not going to cover. We cover their military backgrounds and some of their stories. They're great interviews. Go back and check those out, but continue to watch here as well. Please, if you would, hit that like button and subscribe and leave us a comment to help us with the algorithms. So let's talk Fortitude. Was originally I started to talk to veterans who have started who are entrepreneurs, or own their own business. Mm-hmm. I did it for 10 years in Charlotte. I was a painting contractor, plus did repair work, commercial, residential. Made it through the first crash of 07, 08, was one of the few in Charlotte that did.
Refrigerator.
Well, hey, I got two air compressors.
Why'd you look at me?
It's air compressors.
Yeah.
So that's the second one. The first one, we got the first air compressor when during Randy's.
Did it come on in yours?
No.
No, you turned it off, I thought.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See that? Hey, planner. But what I want to do is share your story, some of the struggles, the successes of Old 18, how it came about, and to give encouragement to other veterans who may be getting ready to separate, that's been thinking about. I don't know if y'all know who Mike Glover is, Fieldcraft Survival. He actually started his business while he was in Afghanistan, I think. Black Rifle Coffee. They started theirs out of the Connex box too while they were in Afghanistan. So those are, along with you all, that's 3 success stories that are, out there. But I'd like to, and we're going to also talk about your book, but before we get into the book, I'd like to talk about Old 18 and how that came about.
Okay. Well, I mean, when we left the Navy, I actually left first and retired, and we had been talking about, we got to do something together, we got to do some sort of business together. We didn't really know what it was at the time, and I said, well, I'm going back home to Texas, so if you want to go into business, you can come to Texas. He said he would. I didn't know if he was actually going to follow through on that, and he actually shows up in Texas and say, hey, I'm here, let's start something. And we went through a lot of iterations of what we were going to do, things from security and gun ranges and different things we had our mind on. Matter of fact, we set up some entities to do these different businesses. And the ones we fell into by chance, I guess. One of them was the fishing rods, so Old 18 itself. We needed a place to work out of because we were doing this kind of stuff. We were consulting, speaking to sports teams already at that time. So at Old 18, we needed just kind of an office space to work out. And my brother-in-law was building fishing rods. at the time, so we went to his office space and we would work out of there, which coincided with one of the other ideas we had. Randy and I have always been interested in survival and outdoors and leveraging some of the things we did in the military that we could teach and maybe provide some products and stuff like that. So we're like, hey, this is a good opportunity. We're going to do an outdoor brand, which is what we wanted to do. Why not start with fishing? So we talked to my brother-in-law. He's a great rod builder, and Old 18 was born out of that. And to this day, we're still a fishing rod company, but we have designs on making it a larger outdoor brand as we go. Now, the name came from Texas history. So a lot of people don't know the Come and Take It flag with the cannon on it and everything. In Texas history, that was the town of Gonzales, Texas, when all of the military-age males had left to go fight the war. But right before the confrontation with Mexico, the Mexican army sent troops to go recover cannons that they had given different towns to protect themselves, and they knew there was a war coming, so they went to go get their cannons back. So in the town of Gonzales, they said, give us the cannon back, and they literally said, come and take it, and that whole thing. So that, in the town of Gonzales, those 18 men that were standing there, actually teenagers, are known as the Old Gonzales 18. So we pulled that name because we wanted a regional flair to what we were doing in Texas history, and obviously if you read our book, it's standing up against great odds and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how it began.
But now I've noticed you have lures, there's other things that that you guys are teaming up with or you guys are carrying now. It's part of your website.
We're starting that. I mean, if anyone could tell you how hard it was to start any kind of company and then get it to a point where not only is it profitable, but it's growing all the time. I mean, if everybody, we went through so many ups and downs, and COVID, and I mean, COVID was actually good. As soon as COVID ended, everything kind of crashed because everyone went back to work, and then the economy kind of went in the tank. And so revenue went way down after COVID. It was just really weird. So, if none of this has been easy by any stretch of the imagination. I know other people have done it, and we're relatively young still, so I'm talking company-wise. So,
how old is Old 18?
2018, so 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, y'all are young still.
August, so really 4.5 years right now. So, but it's growing, and we are just now, I think after the different, let's just call them ventures that we went down with either other companies or other people. I think we're finally kind of have figured out what works, what doesn't, and we're kind of making the right choices now as far as who we're linking arms with to move forward. So we're anticipating a really good year.
There's a big learning curve. Going back to the original statement of helping out young entrepreneurs is you got to be really flexible. The vision you start out with is probably never the vision you wind up with. Yeah. And like I say, Randy and I bit off more than we could chew. We went into this like we're going to own all these different businesses. We went in like we're going to go conquer the world and start all these multiple businesses, and that started whittling down to. And then what really I think shocked us both is the amount of work that had to be involved, especially in a consumer-based business where you're feeding a product to a consumer, which Old 18 is. We had a lot of lessons to learn. Things the way we thought it was going to work versus how it worked in reality. It took a lot of trial and error to get where it is now, where it's a good, stable brand, and it can exist right now, and we don't worry about it too much. But in the first 3 years, that was not always the case, right? It was up, it was down. We thought something worked, but we thought it was for the wrong reason. It was really working for a different reason, why the marketing worked or whatever. Yeah. So it is a grind, and I would say that we probably both went into it like, hey, SEAL fighter pilot, we got this. We're going to figure it out. But as he laughs, right? It's just like, wow, there's so many things.
In our defense, though, a lot of it has to do with just getting parts or just getting products, right? You can't sell something that you don't have. And just getting it, when you're promised, 90 days and it ends up being 10 months, it's very difficult to, so really we started in August of 18. We really didn't until January of the next year. June of the next year, July of the next year. We really didn't even have a product to sell. So, in reality, we're not that old. We're maybe 3.5 years old. So it's just kind of one of those things where, and then during COVID, you couldn't get parts or you couldn't get stuff made overseas.
Yeah.
And 90 days went to a year to get a product, So it's, you're constantly being thrown different curveballs, and you have to figure out a way to react to it and make sure you've got not backup plans, but make sure you have alternatives. And whenever you're going from one alternative to another, the revenues go down, and got to make sure you're not over leveraged. And there's a lot to it, a lot more to it than you think when you first start.
Yeah,
we're still dealing with supply chain issues at work that I can't tell you how many times I've called and they'll say, "Oh, that's 23 to 48 week lead time or longer sometimes." And sometimes, I think the worst I've seen was 1.5 year lead time on something that we sell. So
it's hard to run a business when you don't have product to sell, right? Or when you don't have the inventory.
Yeah.
When you got to switch from importing to domestic because there's no parts, or there's no way to get an imported, anything. So it's.
I hope that it opened the eyes, and I'm probably going to open up a barrel of monkeys here, but hopefully that opened the eyes to people, some important people in this country, to see that what happened in that situation and how we were strapped. We couldn't do anything. We didn't have anything. Everything 90% of what we get comes from overseas, and when that gets cut off, we're dead in the water. And in order for us to be able to get in a position to manufacture that here again so that we can supply ourselves, it could take us years. So I'm hoping that some people can see that and certain things we bring back to the States.
You can hope in one hand and wish in the other.
Yeah.
Right?
I
You can do that, but it's the American people that have to drive that train.
Yeah, they have to be willing to pay.
So if you're hoping for the current, congressmen, senators, and executive branch to actually do their jobs, man, keep hoping.
Yeah. Keep waiting.
Right? Yeah, you got to go out there and fight and do it yourself, and then
there's no incentive.
Yeah.
There's no incentive to do it. We actually rode that roller coaster, and we kind of fooled ourselves with the success during the pandemic, like Randy's talking about. The outdoor industry boomed. Right? Everything outdoors did well while everything else was crumbling around it. So we kind of lied to ourselves a little bit that wave was real. That's what we kind of got caught off guard with. But we actually switched and said, all right, now's the time. We're going to stand on principle. We're going to make everything here as much as we could and start assembling things here. But the American people, we had to raise prices. We had to raise our costs to get the margins correct. And they didn't back us with the pocketbook. And maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. But that's what you're fighting. If you want things to change and get things made here in the States, then people actually have to go buy American-made stuff. It was a big leap of faith for us that we probably never should have taken, because we did not do our research well enough to say, oh yeah, people are going to go with this. They've been telling us they want this, but it didn't. In reality, it didn't flesh out that way. So, to make real change, you not only have to have the lawmakers and everything like that, but the consumers got to go out and make a real effort to buy American.
In our defense, we did find a lot of different ways not to do things really fast.
We did.
Compared to other companies.
Yeah.
So we're anticipating a great year. So, and we've kind of settled where we need to settle.
So how long did it take you to where you were fairly profitable? Was it, you said it took you the first year before. So the first year there was no.
First year we didn't sell anything. Yeah. It's kind of hard to profit when you don't sell
anything.
anything.
Nobody knows who you are, right?
You're just bleeding the first year.
And you have debt and you got to pay the debt. So it's kind of hard to do that when there's nothing there to sell. So.
Now we took a real conservative approach. We started with one series of rods. There were literally 5 or 6 rods in that series, 6, And it was a proof of concept from the beginning. Even when we sat down and said, hey, let's do this fishing rod thing, well, it was a test case. We created one series, we went out, we hit the trail, we went to the fishing shows, we went to the tournaments, and we showed a presence, and we got people to actually buy, like, okay, this will work. So when we really started trying to be profitable, which is a different watermark, right? So we're maybe a year and a half into this, we're like, okay, this is gonna work, let's scale it up. Let's get 3 series of rods. Let's introduce all of this. We kind of had some data already that we knew it would work. So we were actually doing well right out the gate. You would agree, right? I mean, we weren't making millions or anything, but it was like, okay, it's starting to work. We're getting repeat customers, that kind of thing. We're like, okay, success. And then it was going, and we probably went a little too fast, too early. Like, oh wow, this is all really easy. And then we started jumping places we shouldn't have jumped. And then
I've done that.
So we had to kind of, we're at the point now where we've learned the post-pandemic rebound and kind of gauge everything we do, and everything from our message and our brand to our actual products. We've kind of re-envisioned everything. And now we think we've got a different way to attack this year. And with all the lessons we've learned, we're now finally so we're talking 5 years in, we think now we're set up to really get this thing growing.
It'll be a combination of the early model and the later model.
Yeah.
It'll be a combo of that too, and I think, that'll that's the right mix, I think. So.
Well, you'll still have that option if you wanted the USA stamp.
Yeah.
You can, and that's what my wife and I look at. I mean, we'll pay extra for it if it's made here. Now, I can't pay 5 or 6 times more.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. It depends on the industry, right? If you're talking T-shirts, it's one thing, right? You're going to pay $2 extra to get a T-shirt made in the USA. Everybody can do that. But when you're talking a fishing rod, and you want one for $100 because you're used to paying $100, you can get an American-made rod for $100 without the company that makes that rod losing money.
Right.
So if the company that makes that rod can afford to lose money, great. But for the majority of smaller companies like us, selling a $100 rod made in the USA is extremely difficult to do because manufacturing costs are so high. And we're talking about manufacturing ourselves. We're just talking about parts, time in the production line, all those kind of things. You can't make a rod in a day. So it's kind of one of those things where in order to make something in the USA, you're gonna have to pay a premium. But what's the premium? Is it $50, $100? How many people want to do that? Right? You just want to go fish with your wife and your kids, and each person needs a rod. You're gonna pay $600 extra to get 4 rods made in the USA, or are you gonna pay less than $400 to get the rods that you want? So it all depends on people's level of pain, right? So you have to have. We've learned have to have a mix of both.
Gotta have both.
You gotta have a mix of both, and that gives people the option. And for the guy out there who wants a $75 fishing pole for made in the USA, and the sad part is there's a lot of companies out there saying their rods are made in the USA, and they're not.
They're assembled here, maybe.
Right? Not even that.
Really?
Yeah.
They're just because they have a rod line that's made in the USA, they kind of put it on there, and everybody just assumes that their $40 fiberglass rod is made in the USA.
And that irked us when we had both. Yeah. When we started out and we created different lines, we had some made here and we had some that were imported. And then we're like, okay, this is confusing everybody because they think that the cheap one they're buying is made in America, made in the USA. We're like, no, not that one. And so the messaging was really confusing. But now we're kind of full circle. We're getting ready to do that again, and we've got to figure a way to get the message out that some are and some aren't. So consumers are tough. Getting in a business where you're providing a product to consumers is a tough way to go.
So you got to figure out a way to do it honestly, with honor, but be truthful, but give them what they want, give them the options that hey, this is what it costs to buy something that's imported. This is something over here. If I want to pay the extra money, I can get something made by their hands here in the USA. So that's the other thing with the fishing rod industry. You can't get all the parts in the USA. You can get most of them, but not all of them. So is it 100% from the USA? There's no rod company on this planet that gets all of their parts in the USA.
When you actually take a rod and you really examine it, there's a lot of different parts on a rod.
Well,
I didn't realize
not
that.
only a lot of different parts, but it's a long process. Everything's epoxied. Everything's got a cure. It's got to be, the guides have to be wrapped with thread, then epoxied again. The labels have to be epoxied on. Everything's, it's a process.
Labor intensive.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
you're
a
not,
process.
with Old 18, that's not done by some robot or machine.
No, this is all by
does that
hand,
for
man.
you all.
This is all by hand.
Jake's done pretty much everything we put through that's American made is through him.
Yeah. So you got a dude that's 25 years experience with 25 plus companies, and he knows what he's doing. There isn't anything he doesn't know.
And he's not doing for $1.50 a rod.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So we won't divulge how much we spend on a rod made in the USA, but our price reflects that,
Well, I think I had gotten a couple. I think the Ascents is what I got from you guys last year, and donated them to be raffled off at that Wheeling Sportsman
Right.
thing that we done. And I was tickled to death to be able to do that. I mean, I really was. And so now your all's lines, is everything online sale? How do you all, do you all have companies that you're making for that they're labeling for you all for somebody else? Or, if y'all can talk about that, if you don't,
Sure.
if you're not free to talk about that, we can cut that out or,
No.
however y'all want to do it. I don't.
That's another roller coaster we've ridden where that was initially what we did. We were private label manufacturing for other brands, and we had our own brand. So we actually treat it almost as two separate entities. And we've gone to the point where we're not going to manufacture for anybody, tell everybody to go away, and then we've turned it back on. So it's kind of an up and down thing right now. I think there's only a couple companies right now that we're doing stuff for. It's kind of funny to Rainey and I, as newbies in the business, we'd show up at a local fishing show and you'd have 6 or 7 different rod brands. And we're like, well, Jake's making all of them.
We build all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, guys that come to our booth and like, well, I only fished with so-and-so. And I'm like, kind of laughing to myself, well, they came out of the same
Came right up the same rack,
dude
so we put ours
made
on.
the same rod, it's just
different
like,
colors, different,
but yeah, it's just things behind the industry and that's specific to the fishing rod industry that a lot of people don't know about, that there are only so many guys in the country that do that make rods for people. It's very small. Matter of fact, you probably count them on one hand, enough guys who can do it on a large enough
At a
scale to
production
support
level.
a big brand. Yeah, on a production level. There's a lot of home builders and guys who have their little custom brands, but if you're a relatively good-sized regional brand, there aren't a lot of guys out there in the United States that make rods for you, and that's where they're all trying to get to that level where they're not just building in their garage anymore. They're getting somebody to produce their product for them, and like I say, that's probably 3 or 4 places.
So now, I can see where that can be an issue. The other issue that I can see, maybe, wondering how y'all work through is, I know with my company, COVID has redefined how we operate with our doors. Mm-hmm. And some of our branches or some of our stores are closed to the public. They have will call hours only now. And what they've come to realize is those onesie twosies coming in, it's costing the company more to operate with those because we're not a Lowe's. We're not a Ace Hardware store. We're geared more towards the manufacturing side of things, so bulk.
Right.
And I was just wondering how that would work with you all. Do you all have salesmen that go out and approach, shops, or do you try to approach somebody like a Walmart or a Bass Pro Shop or Academy Sports, something like that? How do you all?
Man, we've been through all that. Been through it all, and so the advantages to selling to, say, an Academy, that's great, but that has to be an import. You're not going to make a rod in the USA with our own hot little hands and sell them at Bass Pro Shops or sell them at Academy or at Dick's Sporting Goods. The majority of the time, they want huge discounts, which crushes your profits or even just crushes your revenue. So you'd have to churn 10, 15, 20,000 rods a year. And why are they going to do that when they can do that with their own brand and do it for less, you know? So the companies that we know that are doing that are losing money, and in their brain, it's, oh, my name's out there. But in reality, you're losing money to get your name out there, and if it's not ever increasing, then what good is it? So
It's not a very good marketing.
no. And so for us, you know, that's the other thing, is the balance between how much money you spend on advertising and everything else. And we don't typically allot ourselves a huge advertising budget because of the way kind of just our model is. But you asked, you know, we're primarily online, and we do some face-to-face sales through a couple of outlets that we have in the local area. But the majority of it's going to be online, and shipping has gotten expensive and that kind of thing. But we're getting into some economies, you know, with that. But it's still not cheap. But people are willing to do it. But there's the thing, is most people that want a fishing rod want to touch it before they buy it, and so you have to either provide them a way to see the rod in action so that they can kind of take the gamble of buying the rod based on what someone else says, or you got to be able to put it in their hands. So we do limited fishing shows. Not all fishing shows are profitable. You can go and spend $6,000 going to a fishing show, putting your booth, all that stuff, hotels, everything else, and make no money because not enough people show up. So we've kind of nutted down. The first year, I think we did 7-9 shows, I think.
We did a lot.
In the first year, and we've nutted that down to just a few that actually, one, make money, and two, get our name out there the way we want because we sell enough rods to do it. So there's a mix mash of different ways of making this work. But, you know, the custom fishing rod business is, I don't want to say it's slow to grow, but it takes a lot of effort. You know, we could easily import 20,000 fishing rods that we can sell for $75 and go to Academy, but now we're just churning money in order to provide a product to them, and they are definitely not, you know, business to business friendly. You know, at the end of the year, some of them want you to buy back the inventory, some of them want you to buy back the broken rods. Somebody, you know, so there's a whole bunch of things that at the end of the year makes it very unprofitable to put yourself in a big box store. So the world is going to more online. So you were talking about, you know, keeping branches open for stuff that's primarily business to business. Hey, if you're selling lumber, it's one thing. But if you're selling motors and all this other stuff, it may not make sense. When someone can go online, get the specs they want, hit go, and somebody drives up with it a couple days later, it's...
And he mentioned, you know, the real tough part is trying to sell a fishing rod online without people touching it. Because you think about the anglers, you know, they'll drop just as much money or more on a reel that they've never touched. They just hear about it. Their buddy says it's great, and they'll go and click online and get that reel and not think twice. None of them will do that with a fishing rod. Not one.
It's so weird.
They probably use their buddies, or on their buddy's recommendation, or seen somebody using it on YouTube or something where they can see the action in the bin. So we catch ourselves in this, well, it's not very economical to go put it in those stores, but at the same time, it's really hard just to sell a rod online. So we get caught between that a lot. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of in that zone right now where how do we show what our rod can do without them actually putting their hands on it?
Yeah.
Well, you did that with that one fellow that came to your all shop and did the weight tests. I watched those videos.
Oh, Nick?
Yeah, those were, I thought those were very informative. I'm like, well, if somebody that knows anything about fishing, if they can't watch this and see what quality is and what they're doing, I mean, them rods were bad.
That was an ultralight. That was an ultralight. Picked 10 pounds off the ground. So that was pretty incredible. We were all standing back. We were like, oh, man, this thing doesn't snap. But, yeah.
I thought it was impressive. I liked it. And I like his videos. He does well, too.
He's good. He's a good dude.
He's easy to listen to, and he stays it doesn't chase a lot of rabbits like I have a tendency to do. But that's very informative to me. You all have expressed some things that I experienced whenever I started Brushmasters there in Charlotte. And it's all about profit and margin. I mean, if you can't operate if you can't have a profitable margin, I used to tell people, look, I'm not in business to give somebody a job.
Right.
That's I'm in business to make money. Now, were there times where I wrote payroll and didn't have a check for John? Absolutely. But in 10 years, my guys never missed. At one time, I had 21 guys in Charlotte. They never missed a payday. I missed a few. Now, I still made money. I just had to. You just have to learn how you got to move things around every now and then. But I learned that issue like you all did. That I got into the new construction thing because I saw how fast paced it was and how fast you could turn things over. You didn't have to move furniture, and come to find out real quick after doing a site analysis on 2 houses for one of the track homes that builders I was working for, I was losing $400 to $600 a house, but I couldn't see it because I was cash flowing $25,000 a week. So until you sit there and you break each house down, you don't realize. It'd be like you all turning out 10,000 rods, but until you sit there and figure out what it's costing you to turn out 2 rods, and then what you're selling for. So I went to the builder and I said, I can't do it anymore. They said, Wood's getting ready. I said, I got to have more money. They said, Wood's getting ready to ask you to take less money. I said, don't schedule me for any more houses. I'll stay true to my word. When I final my last house that I have started, we're done. And I laid, one crew took care of themselves. I caught them drinking, so they were gone. And then over the next couple of months, I was able to weed out a couple of other guys. And it's amazing how right before the crash, I had pulled everything back but my repaints, where I was moving furniture, and that's where my money was. And it took me that learning experience of thinking, seeing the money, when you're cash flowing that kind of money, you're like, oh, I'm rich. Well, I didn't make anything. Yeah. I mean, I brought home less than 10% that year. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. And it's just not worth it. And the stress, 3 trucks on the road throughout the Charlotte area, and it wasn't nothing for me to run out $300 worth of gas a day. Running paint and checking jobs and getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and not getting home later 9 o'clock at night. And it was. So yeah, I understand it. It's at some point you have to step back and say, whoa, what's the purpose here? What's my what's my ultimate goal? And that's going to be very helpful to folks. I guarantee you that. Let's take a
detour.
This will be a great place for Chad to throw in an ad for old AT. And if you all need to take a break or anything real quick, use the bathroom, we can do that.
I'm good.
I've actually been, as you guys have been talking, I have their website pull up, so I've been going to different pages for you guys throughout the conversation, flipping over to my computer and scrolling through.
We can do that with our new box.
Nice.
Cool. And your homepage has a really great sort of reel on it about how they're made and some stuff like that. So when you guys were talking about how it was made, I've been letting that play over top of you guys instead of it just being focused on you guys, so that people can see that type of thing. If we're treating this as kind of a break, sort of something that came to mind that I want to mention before I get off of here is like, I know that sponsorships earlier today came up in a weird kind of way, about potentially sponsoring somebody to use y'all's rods. And I know that can be expensive because not only do you have to supply the rod, but you've also got to oftentimes pay people to put your logo on their thing. But if you find, instead of going for a professional fisherman, if you find like the 10 most popular fishing TikToks out there, right? Like I know y'all don't want to run it with social media, but there are people that are already doing it that if you can be like, hey, would you mind doing a review on our rod? They might become their favorite rod that they've ever used. Or a good YouTuber that goes out and does a bunch of fishing stuff like that. It's just a different way of approaching it because those guys are getting just as many views, if not more views, and just as much money, if not more money, than the people that are out doing the professional competitions. And if they're doing reviews on their rods, I mean...
Well, you guys have one guy that you kind of sponsor. I know he does videos on your own.
So let's clarify, right? So we get calls every day.
Oh yeah,
from fishermen who are, I want to rep your brand, man. So in the fishing world, there's pro staff and everything else. Right. We call them boat crew because of seals, but then there's other people. I want to rep your brand, or how about you sponsor our team? And what most of these people really don't understand is that their reach is so limited. right? Their reach is very limited to maybe other kids in high school or kids in college. And if they're, quite honestly, if they're not out winning tournaments, then the amount of money we would spend on sponsoring them is a losing proposition, you know.
And the problem is we try to be very analytically driven. So Randy and I are great believers, especially from this book and stuff. We analyze everything. And when we do a sponsorship like that, there's no metrics. We have no idea what the reach is.
Yeah.
So we may get a bounce from that, but we don't know. We don't know where it came from. So we've had good success already with influencers, YouTubers you mentioned. We've got a couple of them that will rep our brand, and we actually know where those are coming from. We know they have their individualized codes. We know they click on a certain link that they're coming from those guys. So we can measure it. That's the real problem for us. If we can measure a straight sponsorship, we'd do it all day. But to us, it's like, where did that money go? What's coming back to us? So,
and
so
quote unquote,
part of this new, what we're doing this year is we are focusing more on that. To your point, Chad, is we are currently going down some roads to get some more influencers that work for us. And we usually have to build a personal relationship with them, so it takes us a little longer. Yeah. But that's our new push.
And reviews are very, if someone wants to review our rod and do it on their own, great. But for us to go out and find or send rods to people who do reviews, man, we did that, and it did not turn out well. And it's not because our rods are junk. It's because they really have other people that they like and they get more from. And we actually get those kind of phone calls. Well, they're paying me X amount a month. So why would I give you a good review when my bread and butter's over here? And so it's a sticky proposition. If you're going to pay for advertising, which is what this really boils down to, if you're going to pay someone to advertise for you, then they have to have buy-in. Number one, they have to be behind the product. They have to know the quality and be excited about it. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
You know? And so it's one thing to pay for radio and all these other ads, but again, it's depending on what you're doing. So for fishermen, man, they want to see it.
Yep.
And so, videos, those kind of things where guys can see the rod in action and they see it consistently performing and those kind of things. That is where we are going to put our emphasis versus, you might get somebody who has, 3 million followers and all that stuff, and he does a 2-minute review. Yeah, you might get a bump, but you're not getting the weekly, monthly sales out of something like that. And what if they don't like it? What if they did something like, they threw the rod in their boat and they cracked it, and then they get out there and it snaps on the first pull, not because of our product,
or
but
they
because
broke an eye off because they hit it with something
because of their ineptitude.
Right.
I know someone who can take any rod that we put out and break it. Not you. You know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And it didn't matter what rod this guy had in his hands, he could break it.
Yeah.
And now he's breaking someone else's rods, which is actually kind of fun and nice because it's not our rods. But the point being is that breakage in the industry is kind of standards, 2-3%. Everybody's going to have it, that kind of thing. Some people a lot more than that, but not us. Like the Ascent you were talking about, thing almost never breaks, ever. Fantastic rod, but with that said, it's, when you have to have revenue and you have to have profit and you have to have advertising, it's a sticky wicket, man, to make sure you're putting the right money in the right places to perpetuate and grow, which is the goal, right? Perpetuate and grow. And if you can't do that and do it with, and being able to analyze it and know exactly every dollar that you spend, what are you getting in return for that? And that's the biggest problem with sponsorship. A kid wants $500 to put Old 18 on the front of his jersey for the school year, and it's like, okay, what do I get out of my $500? What am I getting, right?
Exactly.
Some fishermen see it, but what if it's on a high school tournament thing where it's just other high school kids, and all those other high school kids, they don't have any money. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm just saying high school kid ain't going to spend $350 on a fishing rod.
To successfully pull that off, you've got to be one of the big boys.
Yeah.
You have to be nationwide monster to be able to just throw money out to sponsorships and get your name everywhere, not just on one or two guys' shirts. It's got to be everywhere, every tournament, every city, and we don't have that to play with yet.
Reach.
Someday, hopefully, we will be throwing money at everybody to do that, but that's not a good return on our investment from our point of view and where we're at right now.
I'll tell you, one of the things I think is a genius thing that you all are doing are the posts you all put up on your stories on Facebook and Instagram, kayakers, freshwater, saltwater. I see them. I love to see them. Anytime there's a short reel of somebody, you're seeing women, you're seeing kids, you're seeing older people. I mean, all makes and models of everybody. And I think it's great. That's why one thing I was telling Randy, that's why I try to, when I see him, I try to get, man, I'm going to share these things as much as I can.
We appreciate that.
And I've got some other folks that I can send a message to and say, hey, when you see this up, let's get this out. Help me get this out. And the way that I promote it, I think you've seen it, is I just promote it. This is a veteran-owned and operated business. Let's support veterans. I don't push the USAA thing. To me, that's neither here nor there. The thing that I want to push is these are U.S. veterans who served our country. Let's give back. That's my whole push. But I think it's great. If y'all had, there was one guy, I thought he competed, that was doing YouTube videos for you all for a while. Would put up a few videos here and there. I hadn't seen anything from him for a while. I can't remember what his name is now.
But life changes for everybody, right? One day you're doing that, and the next day you're staying home, taking care of somebody. I mean, you never know when it comes to...
Right.
So, for us, it's, we have spent a gob of money on the wrong things, on the wrong advertising and the wrong people and the wrong, outsourcing versus us doing all the work ourselves. And, I think it was necessary for us to do all those things to know what'll work and what doesn't. But, when it really boils down to it, there's a formula that you have to figure out, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Nope.
And you got to just keep grinding through it. Unfortunately, I hate that word, but you got to kind of just keep going to figure out what the balance is that everybody can handle, and the money and the business that can actually handle and absorb the ups and downs, and it's a lot. So it's worth doing, but it's just a lot.
Whose idea?
What, the book?
Probably mine. All good ideas are mine.
The illusions of grandeur. How many times have we used
Man,
that?
I told you. I told you.
It was probably, honestly, one of those epiphanies we both had because we were out and have been out doing a lot of teaching to universities, kind of the collegiate level athlete and all sorts of different sports. A lot of golfers, which was kind of neat, but the basic stuff that we teach, and there's a lot more basic stuff that we teach that really isn't in here because it's more, I don't want to call it philosophical, but it's definitely a different flavor than that everybody is going to latch onto right away. But we kind of, I don't remember the day, but it was kind of like, man, we should put all this stuff down somewhere, maybe in a book.
Well, we were told over and over. I mean, we've
been
tried to latch
advised,
on to different mentors throughout this process, and every last one of them was like, where's your book? You got to write a book. You got to put it down in a book. And then we go try to get certain speaking engagements, and like, where's your book? So we're like, okay, we kept that in the back of our head for a while, and we didn't want to do it. I mean, we didn't want to write a book. And then we finally got to what Randy said, where we were spending so much time going to like a new university to talk to a sports team, doing this, which we consider our basic principles, to get them to understand that, and then we can really kind of teach them some of the advanced stuff we want to get to. So the book became, here's our intro. Read the book first, and then you'll know what we're talking about when we come in. So it helped us. It's a tool to help us both in the consulting itself and in the public, because there's just some more credibility about actually having written a book, right? So that's, I guess, how it kind of came. And then with the pandemic at the same time, we were losing in consulting. We'd done some video stuff, but we're like, okay, well, we're not traveling to these schools anymore. Let's take that time and start writing this stuff down.
Yeah, and that took us forever on top of everything else we were doing. Trying to write a book, man, that is not an easy
Yeah, when I
task.
came down there, you said, well, I've got a book that's coming out, and I'm like, well, when's it coming out? Well, it's at the, I'm not sure, but I'll let you know when it comes out.
Yeah.
Well, because you write it, and then you got to rewrite it, and then it's got to be looked at by other people, and then they look at it, and then you got to rewrite it, or if you.
Well, it was initially a ghostwriter, so we started this whole thing out with a publisher and a ghostwriter, and we took him multiple trips out of state to go up there and talk to him and sit down, and he recorded everything. And when he put it in the book, the language he used was not correct. No fault of his own. It's just from the way we talk and our communities and our background, he could not write it the same way. And we're like, this just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like it's coming from us. So we actually took it back after he had written an entire book, and we
rewrote it,
chopped it all up and rearranged it. And it's actually kind of a good thing, because we kind of rediscovered how we present our information to people. We having to sit down and write it down, we came up with like, oh, we need to be talking about this, then this, then this. So we came up with a new order. Yeah, we cut some of the things he was talking about out that some things that aren't that flavor, as he said, right? We kind of cut some of that out. We got right to the meat of the matter, and we wanted actionable things that people could do. They put down that book and they don't go, oh man, I'm super ready to go. Now what? We wanted to make sure that they read that book and go, okay, I need to apply this, I need to apply that. So we wanted to make it real practical for people.
Yeah.
So there's two stories I want to talk about. There was one a little different, I think, than the combat swimmer, but you talk about it in here about when you thought your buddy was hitting you, bumping up against you. That wasn't your buddy.
Oh, the
frogs.
2 frogs on the lily pad? Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because and let you know one of the things that really hit me about that story, that was, to me, it was even more powerful than swimming with sharks. And the other one is for you that I didn't want to get in here was what it's like maybe possibly shooting down a jetliner.
Oh, the 9/11 story?
Yeah. So if you would, I don't want to give too much of the book. I mean, because really, these two stories, they kind of give us a gist about it, because I want them to go by the book today. I don't want to tell everybody all about the book. There's some highlight things I want to get into in here. Right. But if you would, you start first here. You're the old man. We'll give you I'm the good-looking one.
Thanks.
Definitely the old man.
Age before me.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Tell us about that, because we already talked about this, the 70 steps to blow up Noriega's buck.
So it's difficult to convey to people when we talk about adversity and that kind of thing. Most people, adversity is they don't have enough money to pay their bills, right? That's adversity, and they start melting down because they don't have enough money to pay their bills, and they don't know what to do. And that's just a real temporary, short-term bump in the road in reality. It's not a long-term. So when we were trying to convey different story, SEALs and their training, and then, you go to a war, and now you've got op after op after op after op, there's a difference between a short-term bump in the road and some kind of long-term where you're just kind of getting kicked in the teeth every day, every day, every day. It's a lot tougher to continue on when you're getting kicked in the teeth every day. It's easy to continue on when you get kicked in the teeth one day, but the next day is all rainbows and unicorns, So it's for, when we talk to people, when you're developing your skills and whatever it is you want to do, start a business or 2 businesses or maybe even 3, and
you're not going to keep going.
Yeah, and or you're an athlete and a collegiate level trying to get to the pro level and all that stuff. They don't really know what adversity is. Where most military guys can understand really quick the difference between having a problem and truly being under adverse conditions that change your life. So when we talk about performing in the moment, which is what this book is really all about, it's having that unwavering belief in yourself and being able to perform under intense pressure. You're going to figure out what, having adversity is if you decide to go down that road. For the people that want to stay on their couch, they have problems, but adversity is a big deal. So I know it's a long segue into a real short story, but it was very difficult for us to try to convey that thought process and into, what is it like to truly constantly be under the gun every day where, you could die every day and be able to perform at an amazing level every day. And that's the difference between special ops guys and other people. It's just, you got to be able to perform at this intense level every day and win and come back and be able to do it again tomorrow. So this was just one op out of, this is 5 days after the dive op, and we had other ops in between,
Right.
And so this was just a simple case of the Commodore that was in charge of the area that we were operating in needed to know what was on 3 sets of islands, primarily a single island because they didn't have any intel. All they had was an aerial photo, and it was literally just a little peninsula with a big beach house and complex on it. And then there were 2 so in that peninsula there were these 2 black lines that went on either side in the water. So there's maybe 50 feet or 100 feet, and then there was this black line in the water. And nobody thought of anything of it. It was underwater electric cable, something, no big deal. But anyway, longer story longer, but he wanted to know what was on this island. They had all sorts of stupid ideas about how to get out there. Well, why don't we dress you guys in telephone company uniforms? You can drive a telephone company truck out there, and you can go see what's, talk to, and it's like, I'm 6'1", 200 pounds, and I'm white, and I don't speak a lick of Spanish. And the 2 other dudes, they were bigger than me, and taller than me, and more white than me, and less Spanish than me, right? And so, what are we going to do? And so I'm listening to these stupid ideas about how to find out what's on this island. And finally, I had enough. And granted, I was just in E6, and I had my commander there, the CO of Team 3, or Team 2, and the Commodore there, and my OIC there, and it was us 4, and we were talking, and they were talking about these crazy ideas about, the gringos running in there and chatting it up with the bad guys about what they got going on the island. And so, I'm like, how about this? I learned how to be a swimmer scout in buds. In other words, I'm going to swim in there real light, and I'm going to take one other dude with me, and I'm going to crawl all over that island under the cover of darkness. And I will tell you everything that's on that island. I'll even draw you a map if you want me to draw you a map. Because that's what I learned to do in buds. So why don't you just let me to do that, And my CO just looks at me. He's like, you can go now. And so my OIC, who's now indignant and hates my guts because I spoke my mind again, and kicks me out, and I'm standing outside, and like 15 minutes later, my OIC comes out. He goes, okay, you're going in tonight. And I'm like, great, wonderful. I'm swimmer scouting it, right? So he's like, yeah. So I grabbed Todd Peters. I don't know if I can say his name, but anyway, I grabbed Todd, young guy, brand new in the platoon. And I'm like, you and I are going to go swim in there. And I'm like, we're going to wear a little UDT life jacket that we always wore. We're going to take, Car 15, a couple magazines, 1 grenade, and that's it. We're swimming in. Swim fins, mask, that's all we're taking. Because we're a recon unit, we didn't have body armor and helmets, and, had 42 magazines and stuff to sustain me in a firefight forever. Because if I was going to get contacted by the enemy, I'm running, I'm swimming. This island isn't very big. It's 500 yards across. It's small. So I needed to be light and all that stuff. So we needed to get in the water. So the whole platoon comes out, and the object was if I could figure out how many guys were on this island, and we thought a SEAL platoon could take them all, then we were going to have them come in just before dawn, and they were going to do a combined 3-island hit with Dev Group on one island, SEAL Team 4 on another island, and us on our island, and take them all down at the same time. The other 2 islands had kind of been recon. So with that said, this was the only one that was the odd man out. So about, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night, they put me and him in the water, actually down by one of the other islands, which I didn't think was safe, but they put me in the water. I'm like, just get me in the stinking water. We got in the water, and we're maybe, Todd and I start swimming. I'm looking towards shore. He's looking out towards sea, because I wanted to make sure we're swimming straight, and if I saw anything, I had more experience than him. So we're maybe 20 feet, 30 feet away from the boat, and there's like a splash right where his feet are. So his fins, in my head, I'm like, his fins are coming out of the water. And I'm like, calm down, new guy. I know it's your first combat mission here, but it's time for you to keep your fins in the water. He goes, that wasn't me. And I'm like, okay, keep swimming. So we swim, and a couple hundred yards later, he bumps into me. So he's swimming, I'm swimming, he just like comes into me, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Straighten out, And then we go another 100 yards, and there's another splash right where his fins are. And I'm just like, dude, you are killing me, Smalls, right? You are going to get us killed. We are 100 yards away from the beach. So how about you keep it quiet? Underwater recovery stroke, Don't let your fins splash on the water. I'm literally having this conversation with him, while we're swimming, I said, that wasn't me. And so he bumps into me again, like, however long, how much longer. I'm like, dude, you are killing me. And I just, in my head, thinking he just can't keep himself straight because he has nothing to focus on because he's looking out towards the canal. So I'm like, all right, we're going to switch. I'm going to swim so I can see outside, or I'll be on the inside closer to the island, and you swim on the outside so that, we can not bump into each other. It wasn't like 10 feet, man. He bumps into me again, except this time, man, he was not a happy camper. And I'm like, what is your problem? And he's like, sharks, And I'm like, no way, right? And so I'm like, just shut up and keep swimming. And we swim, and then not 10 feet later, I get bumped by a shark. And I'm being bumped. Like they were definitely letting us know that they wanted something for dinner. And it was then that it dawned on me what those 2 black lines were on the beach. It was shark nets, right? So he had his little beach house. That's where he and his peeps hung out, and those were shark nets, keep the sharks out. So it was just weird. Right then I look, and just a little bit closer to the shore, we were getting close to some rocks, and there were 2 rocks sticking out of the water, like a 2-foot dome. And there were 2 of them right next to each other. I'm like, swim for the rocks. And we went, and you never saw 2 dudes get out of the water so fast. And we were sitting on those rocks, like holding our knees just as low as we can get, our fins sticking out because we still had them on our feet. And we're sitting on these rocks. And so you got 2 dudes that were completely out of the water at this point. And we're sitting on these rocks, and he's like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, shut up, I'm thinking, And I'm like, yeah, okay, I think I have a plan, And he's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, well, I'll give you a choice. But we can either swim back to where the other 14 seals are. Actually, it was 18 seals that were sitting over there, and tell them we're scared and we don't want to keep swimming because there's sharks in the water. Or we can keep swimming, maybe do this plan that I've got to keep them from attacking us and potentially die from a shark attack. But I'd rather die from a shark attack than tell a bunch of seals that I'm afraid, right? So he's like, okay, yeah, plan B. That sounds good to me, right? Let's keep swimming. So we literally, instead of swimming on our sides, like kick, stroke, and glide type of thing, we took our car 15, put it in front of us, and we just did this and swam almost like doggy paddle style to the spot where we could actually get out of the water and then do the recon that we needed to do. But no sharks bumped us after that. So, were they nurse sharks with no teeth, or were they freaking great whites? To this day, I don't know. But they had shark nets, so that tells me that they were the kind that had teeth. So it was good. So again, in the chain of events, you have op after op after op after op. Man, that's adversity, right? Getting eaten by sharks, that's a little more adverse than not being able to pay your water bill. So when people talk to us about their adversity, I have so much adversity. I'm getting a a 3.8 in my class, and it's like, come
You're
on.
not swimming with sharks.
Nurse sharks,
You know.
by the way.
Probably
They
would have.
were really dolphins.
Yeah.
They were trying to help him.
They probably would have gummed us to death more than anything.
But the thing that got me about that was, you all talk about later on in chapter 2 about fear, but you did have two, believe it or not, I think it was, the way I saw there was two types of fear there. You had the fear of swimming with the sharks, and you had that you was going to be swimming with them whether you went back or whether you went forward.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That was my thought.
and you had the you
Swim
had
back through the gauntlet.
You had the fear of, oh my God, what's going to happen to me whenever I go back and tell these guys, dude, I was scared to death. Well, you just swam through the sharks, come back. So, but it's fear, and you didn't allow it in this case, but fear can affect our judgment in so many different ways.
Cripple you.
I mean, it's just, it can. And so we'll get a little bit further into that. But I thought these two stories were, that's why I didn't try to cover them on the other side. I wanted to, and this is just a sampling of what people are going to get. And it's an easy read. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
I loved it. Like I said, I read it twice. If I read it twice, it's,
Read it in a couple hours.
it's, I loved it. It's just full of good stuff. There's nothing in here that's going to be offensive. Unless you're just a, I'm not going to say it.
Leaf eater.
Yeah.
A leaf eater, yes.
So
A thumb sucker.
tell us what it was like to get the order.
9/11.
To receive the order.
Yeah, I mean, kind of taking Randy's cue here, why this is in the book, right? It's obvious because it's one of the bigger moments of my career, but this was meant more as an example of, because the whole book's about being prepared for anything, being prepared to perform under great pressure, and this story is about how the entire community that day performed under a scenario that nobody dreamed could happen.
You can't train for that.
You don't train for something like that. Airplanes hitting towers, and what do you go do? But it's really the theme of how everybody reacts during this story that shows that, man, there's some really great decisions made, and they were made on the spot with no information about what was happening, right? So I was a young lieutenant at this time. I was a junior officer in my first tour. We do 3 years there. I'd already done a deployment, so I'm one of the senior junior officers. I'm guys got all the quals, and I've been around. And so we were doing a 2-day fly-on. So when we go out on the ship, we take the airplanes out and over the course of 2 days. And the first wave will go out, and you have to get proficient at landing on an aircraft carrier. You have to have so many landings and catapult shots before you can go operate and do it on the end of a mission. So we fly on, first group does all their thing, and the next day the rest of the planes come out and they do their thing. Well, obviously the second group's the senior guys, the CO, the XO, the department heads, because they get an extra day at home on the beach. I was senior enough to not be on the first day, but I was the functional check flight guy. So if there's something wrong with an airplane or somebody got sick, I was kind of the spare. So I wasn't even briefing to go. And this, like I said, this is obviously September 11th, and they're briefing to go fly on to an aircraft carrier to do one of our standard workups. We're going to go out for 4 weeks, and this is one of our last checkpoints before we go on deployment. And so everybody's just in the ready room. And usually you go into briefing rooms, but this is a big mass brief where they're just talking about landing on a boat, which is really simple. So the guys are all sitting in their chairs, they're doing a brief, and I was just sitting in the back, just kind of hanging out, watching the brief in case I have to go. I'm kind of briefed up on the mission. And then we have a guy who's standing the duty, and he's got his TV, right? And he interrupted the brief, which that's a big faux pas. You don't interrupt the brief ever. And he's like, no, you guys really got to come see this, right? The plane had just flown into the tower. So if you can picture it, we got a whole room full of fighter pilots over there crowding around this TV, and we're watching. And of course, we watched like everybody else when the second plane hit, because it was live on camera when it did. And everything just, I use the word surreal, but it was surreal for all Americans that day, but to be in that situation, in that moment, and standing in that spot, and the things that happen afterwards make it extra surreal for me as far as aviation-wise. Some singular things happened in the air that I've never thought would happen. So we're standing there when it happens, and my first reaction is I look around the room like, who's in charge? And it's me. I'm the senior guy. I'm not the... I'm in charge. It's that moment where you're like, hey, somebody do something. I'm like, oh, I'm the guy. I actually wasn't the senior guy. We had a couple lieutenant commanders, but as far as qualifications and where you were in the squadron, I was the most qualified guy and everything like that. And the other guys were kind of new and flown from other communities. So I was like, okay, I got this. We're going to go launch. We're obviously under attack. So we're going to race the whiteboard and we're going to put new stuff up here. And I pick up the phone to call maintenance downstairs and let them know what's happening. And they literally answer the phone and go, we're moving the jets into the Kayla, which is where the weapons are. That's where all the missiles and the bombs are. And we're going to drop all the toy stuff off that we train with, and they were putting live stuff on. So it was instant. They just started doing their job. We had guys from other squadrons that weren't deployable. They were in different phases of their workups, sending people down that just came in our ready room, knowing that we were the guys. And they said, hey, use these guys however you need them. This is your new duty officer. Take your duty officer and go put them in a jet. And so, I mean, everybody was just jumping in, doing the right things. I'll try to keep this story shorter than Randy's. Because there's a lot of things going on at this point, even in my personal life with my wife being pregnant that we mentioned before. So eventually I get a crew together. I'm going to lead this, right? Because I'm the guy. So I think they told us we had 3 jets that were going to be ready immediately. So I put 6 guys up there, because 2-seat aircraft, and we go run to the paraloft, which is upstairs. We're upstairs above a hangar. So imagine sitting in a hangar, which we are. But the cat walks up high, and there's offices up there. So we're up there. We go into the PR shop. We put all of our gear on, and we go running down the steps. And my commanding officer's coming up the steps. So they shut off all access to the base. So all these commanding officers, executive officers, department heads, they're at home. They're not coming in to fly that day. They're going to come in late and check on things. They had shut down the base. Nobody could get on. And they only eventually, after some time, let commanding officers of units through the gate. So by this time, I'm coming down the stairs. My CO just got on base. He's running up the stairs, and he puts a hand right in my chest. He's like, Lucky, are you leading this? I said, yes, sir. And that's when he said what he said in the book, and he said ROE for shooting down an airliner, which is rules of engagement. This is the wickets that have to be met before you can shoot down a civilian airliner, a Delta flight, a United flight, or whatever it was, which that is kind of the gist of this story. Is even though I thank God I didn't have to take any action that day, I was faced with a moral decision that I did not wake up that morning even remotely prepared to hear that decision. But everything I believe was put on the line right there at that moment. Like, are you actually going to pull a trigger and shoot down an airliner full of American citizens? So that hit me. He spit it out. He spit out the rules of engagement.
They are in the book. So.
Greater than 60 degrees angle bank, greater than 45 degrees nose low, pointed at a populated area, kill it, verbatim. And he said, go. And I always talk about how amazing that is, that he did that for many reasons. One of them being, as a leader, he knew that whoever he ran up the stairs and saw coming down the stairs needed some sort of guidance because of the moral implications of the decisions that those crews were going to have to make. And he came up with something. And what he came up with was not just trivial, it was brilliant. It was, he took the aerobatic rules of flight, so in the FAA, anything greater than 60 degrees in a bank, 45 degrees nose low, is operating outside of a normal aviation envelope, and then he put the qualifier on it, pointed at a populated area. He solved all the rules for me, so I didn't have to think about it if that situation arose. So, Long Aquilino, one of the greatest leaders I've ever met. He's actually in charge of the whole Pacific Armed Forces right now. He's a 3-star, and he's one of the greatest leaders I've ever met, for sure. So we ran out the door that day, and we ran out to the Kayla where they were arming up. And I get out there, and they point me to my jet. I walk over, and they were just taking the training rounds and stuff off all the training bombs and things like that. And they're like, do you want to wait? You want to wait till we get the live missiles on? I'm like, no, we got to go. So me and my Rio made the decision, we're going to get in and we're going to go without weapons. I think one of my wingmen had weapons. And we actually had that conversation in the hold short as we're taxiing out, like, if we have to do something, how are we going to do it? So that, again, very surreal conversation of how am I going to intentionally wreck another airplane without any weapons? So I won't get into the specifics of what we came up with. We had a plan, and we launched that way. It was really weird in many ways. You guys are aviators, so you know, like, from the time you start an engine, there's chatter in the radio, and you're going from one frequency to the next, to ground, to tower, to approach, everybody, departure, and it's just blah, 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 and you're waiting for your chance to talk. Well, it was silent. It was dead silent. There was no comms. And we were directed to go up on one frequency. And I won't go too in depth about what that is, but everybody, and I mean everybody, was on one frequency. So obviously some sort of emergency net you can gather. And we were hearing the calls on the ground. We were hearing guys getting talked to in the air. We were hearing airliners getting intercepted by other fighter aircraft. And we went out the hold short, and they asked us our names, our units, our social security numbers, and they did not clear us to launch until they had figured out that everybody in that aircraft was approved to get airborne. So really, like I say, singular, surreal to be up there. And we launched, and unfortunately I can't say what we did airborne. A couple things that we needed to go check out, and then we didn't know where we were going. You know, our aircraft carrier was coming up out of Florida because that's where it was based, and it was still trucking up the eastern seaboard trying to get to our working area where we were flying on to meet it. And we didn't know if we were going to that one or there was another one in the area that a lot of people don't know about that was up north, and we didn't know we were going to land on that one. So some of the guys from our air wing were directed in the air to go land on the other carrier, which was not their carrier, and there's a big difference. And then we were actually told to go land on ours. So we went and I landed on the carrier we expected to be on, and the guys down there had no idea what was going on. They had no clue.
Oh, imagine that.
So I've got
Are you saying?
I've got buddies, you know, landing signal officer buddy of mine, he has to walk on because he's one of the junior landing signal officers, and they got to have somebody out there to recover. He walked onto the ship, and he was just out there floating around, and he's like, why are y'all here? Like, why are you here, and why are all the planes landing like 2 hours early or whatever it was? And like, you have no clue what's happening? Like, no, we're under attack. So it was just really weird the whole day. And there's some other things that go into it. There was a little bit of hot dogging at the beginning, and then I don't know if I wrote that in the book or not, but and then my son almost being born. Like, I was talking to my wife on a sat phone, which I don't think I'm supposed to say that.
Well,
because they shut down the phone system. So I grabbed whatever phone I could, and it was
Well, there's a will, there's a way.
yeah.
Yeah, we did it from Seafox and got.
Yeah. So
Those radios probably don't even exist anymore.
So I literally got my
Those from a what?
I've got both my parents and my wife's parents sitting back at the house staring at her belly on the couch waiting for this kid to be born, and they're watching that on the news, and I'm calling in on a sat phone going, are you watching this? And she's like, go. I got it, go. Just do it. So, when you mentioned what wives do in the military and how important of a job that is, here she is, like the due date has passed, and she's watching her husband go run off and deal with what's on the TV set. So, amazing situation.
Yeah. About that.
Well, two things you can't plan for: swimming with sharks. The military doesn't put you in a pool of great whites or hammerheads.
They should.
And
They should.
so figure it out.
Right.
If I didn't hate swimming before.
And we would have never thought in a million years that jetliners would have been flown into the World Trade Center. And
No.
Right.
So, there's things you can't prepare for.
Nope.
But I'm thankful that we have the training op after op after op, touch and go, aggravating people at Lynn Haven. We owned a house right down from Lynn Haven Mall.
He probably flew right over your head.
He did. I used to sit there and drink coffee and watch him fly over the house.
So let me tell you the other part of the story then, because I forgot we talked about that in Cajun. And I told you that there was a 2-night special, right? The first night was September 10th on that, whatever that date line or whatever it was. And they did a, should we be using military jets for entertainment? That was night 1 on September 10th. And it was like flying over all-star games and NASCAR races, and people have had heart attacks because it shocked them. And then the second night was going to be all Virginia Beach. It was all going to be Cajun and the noise at Virginia Beach. And we've been putting up with this for a year and a half, 2 years leading up to this. I had actually been in the simulator trying to find quieter ways to do approaches into Virginia Beach and out. And they had pilots trying to figure this out, like how do we not annoy the... So I'm sitting there.
Explain Cajun real fast in case somebody hasn't. In case somebody for some reason
Hasn't
was
watched the other
was a dipstick and
Right.
didn't watch the other podcast.
You should watch the other podcast. But it's CCAJN, Concerned Citizens Against Jet Noise. And they were concerned at the time that this was the president of the organization. They were concerned at the time that the jets were making too much noise around the city as we landed at our air station.
As they are.
So this is bad. This is a bad part of it, but this was really hot at the time. Been going for a couple of years, and here we are running out the door, launching because we're under attack. And I'm sitting at the hold short, and I'm thinking, how do you like us now? Like, so that's the thought process of a young fighter pilot. Is I'm like, oh yeah, I bet y'all like that jet noise now. So
I'll break a few windows whenever I had a...
So I decided to do what's called a low transition, which is, you've seen it probably, the Blue Angels do it in the air show. They barely rotate the nose, they pull the gear up and they set it right next to the ground and go all the way down the runway. So I decided I'm gonna do a low tranny out of here. Not just, and this is not hot dogging, so if people are watching this is not a hard thing to do, right? This is something we do for fun. And I'm gonna keep it low. And if you know, out in Virginia Beach, the end of that runway, there's some trees, there's a little bit of the Strand is right there, and a couple of hotels and a beach, and it's only a couple miles. So I just held it. I held it down all the way out to the water. And I'm literally going by condominiums and boom, right over everything and boom, out of there, right? I don't know if the guys behind me did or not. I never asked them, but I was like, yeah, showed them, you know. And I didn't think until probably a couple years later, like, that was really dumb. Like, people are thinking airplanes are attacking them. And I just boomed. I just boomed Virginia Beach with an airplane. Probably scared the crap out of everybody. And I was at the time, I was just so cool. But then I'm like, oh, that was really dumb. I probably scared some people. So, but yeah, I got my dig in on Cajun, and we didn't hear much from them after that. But yeah,
I'm reinvigorating it.
Little hot dog action, flat hatting, as they would say.
Tom Cruise moment for his flyby.
I have a couple of those.
What is?
Fight killers. Talk to me.
He's a philosopher.
You're gonna make me go again?
He's the philosopher.
So fight killers are, let me back it up. So Randy and I, part of our principles are to be able to perform at your best in a moment. You have to have a clear head, and I mean no thoughts. It's this razor focus we try to teach people all the time, and it's really where we try to take every client, is to find them this focus. And to only do it, you have to get all the crap out of your heads. And so to us, those are called fight killers. It's things that kill your ability to fight. It can be thoughts, it can be fear, like we brought up, it can be self-doubt, it can be people in your life, it can be the environment, it can be your physical condition. There's all different kinds of things that prevent people from focusing on what they need to do when they're under pressure.
Cougar.
So yeah, you're running around with your wife and kids in your cockpit, you know, fight killers, things that, you know, it comes out of the, you know, if you study victims of violence and things like that, and there's certain thought processes that come out of those studies that victims have when they unknowingly get attacked. You know, the doubt, the what is happening, the why is it happening, the rationalizations, and these thoughts prevent them from fighting back, from acting, because they're going through these things. Meanwhile, something is being done to them, and they're losing because they're thinking about things. So for us, you got to get the fight killers out of your head and be able to just execute mechanically without thinking about it. So that's the gist of Fight Killers. And for us, our units spend a whole lot of time trying to introduce Fight Killers into our enemy. We want them to think about what's happening and not be fighting back. So
Too few people actually look ahead and think through all of the different things that they have to come to grips with before you can function under intense pressure. You have to kind of get rid of all the beliefs or whatever you want to call it, all the different junk that hangs out in your head, So for college athletes, what are they worried about? Mom, dad, scholarship, girlfriend, boyfriend, those kind of things. Their status on their social media and how many likes they have and all this other stupid junk that means nothing, but to them it means something. They may have other people in their lives, and we call them cancers and that kind of thing. And you literally have to sit down and think about, hey, I am going to try to achieve some huge goal. And these are all the things, these are all the people, these are all the, the financial things and all that kind of junk that normally will bog your brain down whenever you're trying to perform in the moment, as we call it. And unless you actually deal with those kind of things beforehand, think about them, come up with how you believe and what you believe, and unless you do those things, which is stuff we have to do all the time and come to grips with. I mean, we had to come to grips with dying, every time you go out, and it's not just in combat; it's in training. I was
going to mention that.
So, I mean, you and I could have easily drowned if we'd have gotten, hit the surf the wrong way back, in '88. So, you got to come to grips with all these possible things that are in your life, and in order for you to be able to perform under intense pressure, you have to be able to have tools to get rid of those thoughts and to keep them from coming back while you're trying to perform under intense pressure. So there's ways of doing that, and that's why we believe being mentally tough can be taught. And that's a lot of the stuff we outline in the book is the techniques that we used and the people that operate in our peer group, the tools that they use in order to do it. And I think the difference between what he and I do and what other people do is that most other people, just don't quit. It's like, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Don't quit, right? You want to be a SEAL, just don't quit. But how do you do that? How do you take on that mentality of never quit, right?
And Randy, he said earlier that there's a lot of stuff we left out of this book, and there's some things, when I said we rearranged how we teach people, is we used to come in and hit people with real heavy moral questions right out the gate. Yeah. Because it's very crucial to what we're talking about. If you want to get rid of fight killers in your life and you want to be able to perform without thinking things, you've got to remove the fear of death. You've got to know you can't be sitting there in the fight of your life going, does God exist? Am I right with God? Is my family going to be taken care of? Because those are the real thoughts that come out in the studies of domestic violence and stuff like that, or attacks of violence, is people are questioning their mortality and all this stuff, and you need to be fighting. So if you think about what the Navy did for all of us, right? When you went on deployment, you filled out your will, you got your power of attorney, you got your medical stuff done. They removed that for you, right? And then your religious or your spiritual thoughts need to be resolved as well, because I don't need you thinking about that when you're flying off my wing and missiles are flying and stuff like that. So we've talked about this, and we have different ways we approached it. But I would go up on a flight deck and get in a jet, and there's a couple different kinds of pilots. There's a start time where they're going to call for start engines. Some guys will walk out there 5 minutes prior, walk around their jet real quick, jump in, flip some switches, and go. Me, I got out there early. I was that first guy out there. Make sure everything was good. Then I'd sit in my jet, and I literally did a mental inventory about, I got to get all this out of my head. So is everything taken care of? If I die off the end of that catapult, am I good with where I'm at? So I would literally take that mental inventory. But that's the stuff that we would come in real heavy with people and teach them the stuff, and it was kind of taking them back.
Yeah. So now that's later on in the process.
But we still do it, yeah. I mean, we're going to get them to some point after they understand all this. Yeah. Like, you really want to get this stuff out of your life, you got to get everything under control.
People are like, you got to do all that stuff just to be able to perform, like, be able to win the Masters. And our opinion is, yeah. Mm-hmm. If you want to perform under intense pressure, you better be really, really good at, making your life right so that you can go train hard and you don't have any reservations and you're not allowing the cancers in your life to pull you back down into mediocrity.
There's this everybody knows. I mean, they talk about perception, opponent perceptions, crowd perceptions, internal perceptions. I mean, we can sit here and talk for days on this stuff. I just kind of want to highlight
it's a lot.
There is a lot. One of the things that you all talk about in here is focus. And one of my all-time favorite movies you all use in here, it's in Gladiator, when Russell Crowe always bends down and gets that dirt. When I played baseball, I didn't know why I did it, but I always done that. Before I went to bat, before I put my glove on, I thought, at the time I guess I thought I was kind of taking the sweat off my hands. I didn't have any sweat on my hands, but I think I didn't realize what I was doing till I read the book, and I was mentally preparing myself for what I was getting ready to go do. And I thought that was, because you all talked about kind of what you all did. You all wanted to kind of talk about how you kind of got in that moment, and
Well, I think we discovered after many of our discussions is that we both got ourselves into that zone, if you will. In the book, in our concepts, we call it the bubble, where we actively are pushing out fight killers. Like I'm going to go do something. I need to get all the fight killers out of my head. That state we call the bubble. And then we both discovered over time that there were things we did that triggered our ability to get in. So we call it a trigger. And for us, there were different things, but they were always something physical that was done, that we did something a physical way, that touching something, doing something with our hands or whatever it was that put us in that zone, if you will, that mindset to go operate. And then you could just exist in that state until the mission was over. And, Randy and I talk about it all the time that, these athletes talk about the zone, it's this mystical place. And we're like, what are you talking about? You just get into it whenever you want. So that's where the trigger came out, with these physical things that we did to prep for combat or whatever.
It's you. And at the same time, if you can clear your mind of that, things like, so let me back up. There's a big difference, and you've said I don't know how many times since I've been here with this about winning. You expect to win. You train to win. When you go in, if you go into battle or you get in your jet and you launch, or we insert you and you go into battle, you don't go in there hoping you're going to win. You go into that expecting to win.
Exactly. Good words. Hope is a poor strategy, right?
That's right. And it's so I have watched it time and time again. The first store that I went to, the company I'm with now, when I went there, they had hit their sales goal once in like 2 years or something, or a couple of years. And it wasn't anything that I done, but we came together as a group in that situation of sales and running that store, and we started hitting goal. And it got to where we went from hoping to hit our sales goal to where we expected to hit our sales goal. I've watched football teams, Chad's high school football team, when they hit the field, they didn't hope to win, they expected to win. I mean, it was a mindset. And I thought about that when you all wrote in the book about that poor baseball team. You guys kind of want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, when you talk about hope means that you haven't trained enough. Hope means that you haven't prepared yourself well enough, right? So when you're hoping to win, or you're hoping something's going to happen, you haven't prepared. You haven't laid the groundwork for that to happen, and that's why you're hoping, right? So, for us, it's always in the preparation, right? So when we do anything, whether it's, a training mission or a real op, one, we have done the training to prepare for that. Two, we have already decided on our we call them predetermined responses. So I'll throw that out there. It's kind of I don't want to say it's a fairly large concept, but whenever you're trying to go from A to B, whatever your goal is, like for us, the insert, when you were driving the old Sea Fox around and we got to the beach, or we got close to the beach and now we have to swim in, your radar might not have worked. So now we're dead reckoning and we don't know if we're in the right spot. So when we get on the beach, we may not be in the right spot. So if that's the first time it's happened and the first time I've thought about it as a leader, then now we're sitting on the beach, like me on the 2 rocks with him, and I had to come up with a quick decision. Or lucky on 9/11, he had to come up with neither of us were prepared. I wasn't prepared for sharks. He wasn't prepared to launch on 9/11. But we both had enough training to where it's like, okay, I can take this situation, and I have a response that I can pull out of this little bag of tricks or a quiver of arrows, whatever you want to call it. But I have a response that I can use for this. I had never swam with sharks before, so that was kind of an interesting, my response was interesting and probably not great. But, so for us, anytime that you are going to, try to achieve a goal, you have to think about all the things that could possibly happen, and you have to come up with responses to that. So there's a lot of mental work that comes up, that comes with this. So when we were working with different sports teams we walked in and we knew sometimes in just a few minutes we're like, there is no hope here.
Yep.
And then other teams you walk into and it's like, man, these guys have it all together.
It's not hard to tell either, is it? You can pick up on pretty quick.
Well, it's sports in particular. You can watch any sport, any game, and you can tell when the other team stopped believing they can win.
Yep.
There's a point in every football game, baseball game, whatever it is, you can look and go, they all just lost hope. They all don't think they can win now, and you can just see it. And I think what we put in the book was that team was from the get-go intimidated.
Yeah, when that bus rolled up and they all rolled out of there.
So what you're talking about in the book is that one sports team, baseball team, and another baseball team. The other baseball team had a reputation for having more money and higher quality players, and that was the reputation. That doesn't mean they could win.
Right.
What they didn't have was cohesiveness. What they had was a bunch of individuals, not a team. Everybody on their own program, everybody their own special uniform and their special little sports bags and their special bus and all that kind of stuff. But what they did have was someone with enough brains to know how to intimidate the other team. So you're sitting there at home, in the home field, in the dugout, waiting for the other team to show up. And the other team didn't just come to the parking lot. The other team, and get off and kind of trickle down and get in their dugout. The other team drove the bus on the outfield, right? And out came all the players in their freshly cleaned, pristine uniforms, hut, all in a line, straight over to the dugout, the coach. After that was all the people carrying their bags.
All the trainers and everybody.
And the trainers and
they
everybody.
Just kept coming off the bus.
And it was just a line of intimidation coming off of that bus.
Right.
That game was lost that second. It was lost.
Randy and I standing on the side, both looking at each other like, oh, man.
Yeah, but
we knew exactly what was happening.
We were also looking at the team that we were helping. And we were looking at them, and they were all just like...
Yeah, they were staring.
Just
Starry-eyed, instead of being, meat-eating, aggressive baseball players and telling each other that doesn't matter, they were all just silent and just staring.
Yeah.
And we
knew we were in trouble.
We were both like, yeah, they just lost.
We knew they were going to lose that game.
And they did. They got crushed. So...
and they weren't even really a better team.
No.
The team we were working with was actually really good, a bunch of young fire eaters, and they were having a really great season. I'm like, they could beat that team. They should have beat that team. Man, but they lost it before it even started.
Yep. So.
Would you say that happened a lot in Tiger Woods' prime?
Oh, yeah.
That those guys...
What do you think the red shirt's all about?
That's what the red shirt was. It actually is.
Yeah.
How's that? That's in the book. We talked about perfect practice. I mean, you guys, you've already talked about that. That's the main thing. I mean, you've got... If you're going to do it right.
Good enough don't count.
And
But most people don't know what we mean when we say that. Most people don't know how to practice or train for something. And it's really, we get these really wild different ways that people prepare and train, and they don't plan their training. Their training is their plan. They train and that's their plan to get ready. But instead of planning out how you're going to train to actually do the event, that's a rarity. And that's something that in the military we all did, right? We talked about the training and how we're going to train to meet the goals so we can go out and perform. And you get these civilian athletes and these kids or whatever, that is their plan, is to train. But they don't know how to do it. So
they don't have a measurable, repeatable result.
Right.
And they don't know how to take that measurable, repeatable result and then turn that into a new training program, and they have no clue.
And they do it until it feels right. They have no idea when to stop, when the practice has achieved a goal, because there is no goal. So they go out and they're like, oh, that feels good. Oh yeah, there's my swing, there's my whatever. I'm ready to go. And you're like, well, no.
I feel great.
What were you trying to achieve? Did you achieve it? How did you achieve it? What was the measurement for achieving it? And then what problem does that achieving that address for you in the real event? So there's just this haphazard push. And we say perfect practice. We're talking about not doing every little mechanical thing perfect. It's the perfect plan and the perfect preparation. That's perfect practice.
So you all talk about a couple of golfers that you worked with.
Mm-hmm.
One individual had all the talent in the world
And wasted it.
Mm-hmm.
How, with you all being who you are and seeing that, how does that? I mean, how does that affect you? I mean, how do you keep from just taking somebody? How do you just keep from just jack slapping somebody and say, "Buddy, you've got all the talent in the world. You can't make somebody have desire or a commitment, can you? No matter how much talent they've got, they can."
I hate to say it, but we look at some people can't be fixed. That's a bad way to put it. But there are people who we talk to them for a while, put a little effort into it, and you can see there's no light coming on in terms of how we see it. And if they're not coming over to see how we prep and how we look at things, then we're like, okay, they're not going to get to that point. And he was one of them. We both approached him different times, together, separately, trying to put little things in his head that would make him start to see things in a different way, and it just never...
Didn't want to hear it.
He didn't want to hear it. He had it all figured out.
He thought that his talent would carry him through all of his problems and the future. He truly thought that he was kind of like, you guys know. You guys don't know squat.
Yeah, it was like
You're
that.
not golfers. And it's like, no, we're not. But we know how you're going to get to the Masters, and the way you're doing it isn't it. And he disappeared into obscurity.
It was an incredible waste. I grew up golfing. I grew up on a golf course. I was around it all the time. And I remember walking out for the first time to go, because we were invited to come out and watch these kids hit off the tee and on the practice tee. And we were actually, my head was turned, and I heard the impact that he made when he hit. And I just swung my head around like, what was that? Like, it sounded like a shotgun. And just, I was in awe watching this kid swing. I'm like, he's got something special. And then we met him and got the attitude and the lack of drive and focus. I'm like, oh man, what a waste. What a waste. And we knew, like, this kid's never going anywhere.
What's funny is we both watched the same group of guys over about an hour and a half period, and we came back together to talk about him, and we were like, that's the leader, that's the guy that's going to fail. And we had both picked him. We had both picked the same two guys, basically. Everybody else was kind of in the middle, but these two guys, they stuck out.
And the one we said was going to be the successful one, we had actually gone over and we were talking to the coach.
Yeah.
And we said, this is your guy.
I
think he was a freshman at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a freshman.
And he's like, he's got some talent, he's kind of this. And like, no, that's your guy. He's going to be the man. And he's like, we'll see. And he's a pro golfer right now. I mean, you can
Legit.
he's a real, he's done some pretty amazing stuff already. in his career, but we could just see it's the way they view things, it's the way they attack things, it's the way they prepare for things, and we just saw it. And the other kid, you're just like, you know, he's over there hitting balls, grabbing his cell phone out of his bag, and we're just like, that guy's not your leader.
So the people you've worked with, you know, I guess both of those guys can fall into this category. So the folks that you all have worked with, businesses you all have worked with, universities, whoever, what would you say would be your biggest disappointment from what you saw trying to work with the folks that just didn't want to put in the time, and your greatest accomplishment that you saw while you was working with?
Well, in business, and sometimes you have a business team, and your most talented, outspoken person is the one you need to get rid of, because they are just a cancer for everybody else. In other words, they're condescending, they're not helpful, they're not a team player, but they may go out and make a sale when other people have gone out and tried and failed. But are they really, your revenue is good because of that one guy, but you have 9 other people on the team whose revenue is nothing because this one dude just spends his time crushing their soul. And so would you rather have 10 people out there making money and building a team and making more money, or would you rather keep this one guy, but yet these other 9 are just getting trashed every day? Right. So sometimes it's the leadership within a company. They can't see the forest for the trees. In other words, all they can see is, well, if I lose my one guy, then these guys are selling nothing right now. And it's like, no, it's the opposite. Get rid of that guy and you'll see these people blossom out. You know, that's disturbing to watch.
And I would think that, I think you're alluding to a specific team we worked with.
Maybe.
That, yeah, I mean, there was one team, and I think it probably most instantly popped in our minds. We said, what was the greatest failure? And it's not really a failure on our part as much as it was a disaster that we walked into.
Yeah, that you observed when you were trying to work with somebody.
It was a disaster from the start, and after 2 hours, we both were like, we are wasting our time talking to these people. Mm-hmm. We need to focus on the head person.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. It was kind of incredible because we went down to talk to them. They got them in a room, and there was just a weird vibe in this room. It was like a country club room, and they were sitting around some tables, and we're in the middle on the podium, and they looked really disinterested. They didn't want to be there. Like Coach made them go there or whatever. And we started talking. Like I said, the old way we used to present this information, what we really started with was team. We'd start talking about a team first and the common threads of the elite teams we've worked on, and they couldn't have been less interested in what we were talking about. They're literally looking around, like doing this, and we're like, at some point in our lecture, we get down to talking about this type of stuff. Individual, here's what you do, here's how you perform on your own, and stuff like that. And well, it was him or me, but we both looked down and they had the notes, and one of us put our fingers down here, like where the individual stuff was, and we just skipped all the team stuff. We went right into talking about your individual performance, and they all perked up. And we both looked at each other like, uh-oh. This is not a team right now. These guys don't care about each other. They don't want to hear anything about a team. And we did probably 2 or 3 more things with them, and it was exactly how we thought it was going to go. It was a disaster.
Three clicks within the team, and you could tell this one and this one and this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. They all had totally different perspectives, and it was, I think the second day there was a lot of crying and gnashing of teeth, and it was like,
it really was.
It was like babysitting a bunch of toddlers.
And then you had the touchy-feely, I love you, coach, and he had his favorites, and everybody just needs to get along, and we're like, oh, wow, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to start, because that's what we found ourselves doing more than we thought we would, going to talk to these different teams, was the coaches needed training.
More than the students.
Because we just thought we were going to go into these places and fix these student athletes.
That was the first time we fired ourselves.
Yeah, we kind of did.
We fired ourselves from that.
We're like, you don't need us anymore.
Yes, we are not the people for you.
Yeah.
So, pretty funny.
Mindset. You went in with the Navy when I did. Mm-hmm. When I went on the Shasta.
That's when all the cool kids went in the Navy.
Yeah. I was in high school.
When I went on the Shasta,
you were probably in grade school.
When I went on the Shasta, if you back talked to a petty officer or superior, you didn't hear anything for a day or two, and then, hey Garrett, get back to the after bosun locker and grab me this. And when you walk in, the hatch gets dogged down behind you. And when they get done with you, you fell going down the ladder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just it was a different mindset. It was a matter of respect and discipline. 10 years later, after being at SBU 20 and being a part of that, and seeing what it had become when I left there, I can't do this. I can't have some 18-year-old kid, when you ask him to do something, look at you and say, go take a hike, dude. I ain't doing it. You do it. It ain't my job. And to see where we're at today with our culture, I wish I could get this book in the hands of every middle school student. I don't want to say high school, that's too late. Really, middle school's too late. That in life is not like a video game. You don't get a reset. You don't get another life. You can't put another quarter, or I don't know what it costs this day and time, in a video machine.
Yeah.
If you die, you don't spawn somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Phil Robertson is seaweed.
Yeah.
You know, we come from seaweeds. What people try to tell him. I just think that the book is amazing, and I read it twice for a reason, is because my biggest fear in life, and I'll be honest with you, my two biggest fears in life, one is failure, and the other one is dying alone. Oh. But not realizing that I came into this world. Alone, I'm going out of this world. And there's a scripture in the Bible that is my main one. Just God has not given us a spirit of fear. And but of love, and that's what I hold on to. And going through this book, it's really given me the encouragement to make decisions. Yeah. Because when you go through life, and I want everybody to hear this. I hope there's parents out there that's listening to this. You got to let your kids fail, and know that you're there to pick them up. And Chad will tell you this too. One of the things that I tried to do when I coached football with these kids, you never tear something down that you can't build back. And some kids, his older brother, if I'd get on him, he was done. He just shut down. And you have to learn those kids. I mean, you had some of those on the teams, or as a pilot. I mean, if you try to give them constructive criticism, they didn't take it as constructive criticism. You were going after their manhood, or you were questioning their abilities or their intelligence. You were insulting them, not trying to help them. And it's one of the things that I appreciate about the book, is that you guys talk about that, and about how the fear, you have to be able to manage that fear. I'm sure that it wasn't a pleasant sight sitting there on that rock, knowing that you're surrounded by sharks. I mean, that's pretty daunting. And I know it probably wasn't. It wasn't under the cover of daylight. The sun wasn't shining either.
Middle of the night.
You're getting in an aircraft. You've been given rules of engagement that could possibly down a jetliner that's got civilian lives on it. Who would have ever thought that you would be given that? 9/11 changed everything. But just like the ordinance over Virginia Beach, the Cajun went away. Now it's back.
Yeah.
How quickly we forget.
I'm leading that cause.
do you guys have something coming up with another organization or another guy that y'all want to talk about that, or you want to wait? I don't know. I don't know where you're at in it.
It's just a natural process for us. In other words, he and I are not the greatest, I don't want to say marketers. You can have, like with you guys, you have a professional setup for your podcast. If you don't have a professional setup and you're not knee deep in the lighting and everything else, then you've got to find somebody who has that. So that's the natural progression for us. We didn't write a book to necessarily go out and sell a million books. We wrote the book because we really wanted people to get the basics so that we could then teach them more advanced things in order to build their mental toughness. So it took us a year to kind of figure that out, where it's, hey, this is the path that we need to go down with this, in order to change people's lives. We need to see them. We need to talk to them. The book is so, it's impersonal, right? It's just paper. But it's when you can talk to people and look them in the eyeballs and actually hear their questions that it matters. So we're going down the road of some online courses in order to get some of the basics out there. Another avenue to get the basics out there. But our ultimate goal is to spend as much time as we can with people, talking to them directly. And when you do that one-on-one, it's very difficult. Your time's limited, and their money's limited, that kind of a thing. So it's you can only work so many hours in a day. So we got to multiply that somehow in order to get our what we think is a kind of a cutting edge setup for building mental toughness. We have to be able to do that on a larger scale. And so again, you can sell 1 million books. There isn't a lot of money in books, and it's not all about money, but we need the money in order to go out and do the things that we want to do and build people's lives the way that they should be built, and try to counteract some of this, the negative attitudes and the negative, thought processes that are out there. And that's why people fail. It's because they don't have the tools to know how to succeed, and it doesn't matter what your measure of success is. If you have one, you got to know how to get there. And it's really difficult. I've read a lot of books about self-help, and all of them are garbage, So
you don't want to plug the website?
Plug it.
Please, please do. Let us know where everybody can grab your book.
It's Unwavered. It's unwave.red. Yes, .red exists, Randy. So unwave.red.
I looked at .com and I couldn't find it.
Who'da thunk?
No, it's unwave.red, and we just set up the website. You can get the book. You can get an ebook copy of that. We're just now getting ready to put what you were alluding to, our first educational series on there. So it's going to be a first lesson about when we talked about perfect practice, talk about how to plan a practice. That's going to be on there. And then start introducing what we want to do. So if you want to get in touch with us for speaking or any type of engagement, that's where we're going to be reached. So unwave.red.
Just so everybody knows, neither one of these men are short for words. They have the gift of gab, and they don't chase a lot of rabbits. They don't beat around the bush. And if you don't want to know the truth, don't call these two, because you are definitely going to get butthurt.
Don't waste our time.
So
I think that's our new motto.
But if you truly want help,
if you don't want to get butthurt,
if you have a business out there that you really want, or a team or whatever, to get the help you need, I'm telling you, I'm just an old hillbilly from West Virginia. But like I said, it's an amazing read, and I can't wait to see what you guys do through the organization, because Chad and I both know the fellow who's behind it over there, and highly respect it. And I am extremely excited to see what comes out of that.
Cool.
And please, once it starts to you have to let me know so that we'll make sure we help you guys get that plugged out as much as we can. Anything you guys want to add before we shut down?
No.
Be careful what you wish for. Go another 4 hours.
Don't get butthurt.
No, I think we're good today, right?
Oh my God, Randy sends Chad a message the other day. How long ago was it? It's been
Oh, it was
another-
weeks ago. He was just checking up on me. He was like, make sure you kick your dad in the nuts for me.
No, I said punch him in the junk.
It's pretty standard.
Basically,
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I got a chuckle out of that.
Well, it was an honor talking to an awesome Navy SEAL and a Top Gun pilot. And one's off my bucket list.
There you go.
Please hit the like and subscribe. Leave us a comment to help us activate the algorithms. Please visit old18.com for your fishing rod needs, or they've got an array of stuff on there. Get a hat, get a shirt, buy something. Support a veteran-owned and operated business. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you all so much.